Hello students, today we shall be taking up the poem, The Ball Poem by John Berryman. This has been taken from your class 10 NCERT book, First Flight. So let's see who was John Berryman. John Berryman was an American poet and scholar. He was born in 1914 and his demise was in the year 1972. He was a major figure in American poetry in the second half of the 20th century, and he is considered a key figure in the confessional school of poetry. Let's recite the poem now. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over there it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him a dime, another ball is worthless. Now he senses first responsibility. In a world of possessions, people will take balls. Balls will be lost. Always, little boy. And no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning. Well, behind his desperate eyes, the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days how to stand up. Alright, so before going on to the recitation and further explanation of the poem, let us talk of the rhyme scheme. There is no rhyme scheme as this poem has been written in free verse. Alright, so interpretation of the title. The word ball has been used here as a metaphor to refer to the materialistic possessions of a person in his life. So through a boy, the poet, through a boy who has lost his ball, who loses his ball while playing, the poet has highlighted this. So it can be a football, it can be a basketball or any other kind of, toy. So the theme of the poem is much bigger than it appears to be on the surface, children. Losing and gaining is part and parcel in one's life. Losing your loved ones leaves you shattered. However, in this poem, the poet talks of losing one's materialistic possessions and the impact of the same on one's psychology. The poet sends here an important message that grieving over lost things should not be done. Nothing is or can be the end of the world. So one should be brave and accept the loss courageously and gracefully. So that was my interpretation, and more or less that is indeed the theme of the poem. So let us go on to the explanation part. Alright, the first 4 lines. The poem opens with a scene depicting a boy who has lost his ball. And here the poet says, what is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go. So this I refers to the poet himself. The poet uses the word merrily for the ball. He personifies it, and he's also contrasting it with the gloomy mood of the boy. And then when he says, no use to say, oh, there are other balls. So it signifies that the boy will not be pacified by any kind of explanation which is given by the poet. So as the poet says that there is no use of saying, there are other balls, because this is not going to convince the child. This is not going to calm the child. This is not going to pacify the child in any manner. So an ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy. What does this mean? This refers to the shock that the boy is going through. So he's shocked and has become rigid, meaning thereby that he is not able to move or say anything because of the grief, because of the sadness. And then the poet says that an ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down. So staring down means that the poet talks of the boy's good old days when he used to play with the same ball. So he is perhaps, thinking of his good old days, his younger days into the harbor where his ball went. He talks of his good old days when he used to play with the same ball, which at the moment he sees rolling down in the water. So here you can see that the poet talks of the deep emotional attachment of the boy with the ball. And what is a ball? Eventually, it is nothing. It is just a materialistic possession. Now, the poet says that I would not intrude on him. The poet says that he would not interfere with the emotions which the boy is undergoing. He is not going to interfere and pacify the boy or, console him. So the poet says that he would not interfere with the emotions of the child, with the mental turmoil that the boy is undergoing. He will not console him with a dime means it can refer to another ball. So a dime, that is another ball, is going to be worthless for him. This means that the poet will not at all console him or offer to spend money to buy another ball. Why would he do that? Because he feels this is not going to teach any lesson to the child. Okay, so he senses first responsibility. So this particular this loss is going to teach the child to be responsible, how to take care of one's belongings or possessions. So he senses first responsibility. Basically, children, refers to the first lesson of his life. This loss will teach him a lesson that he will remember forever. In a world of possessions, people will take balls, balls will be lost always, little boy. So in a world of possessions here refers to the hard realities of the materialistic world, where people gather things and become emotionally attached to them. When the poet says balls, balls will be lost always, he basically conveys the universal nature of loss. People will possess things which will not stay with them forever. Either they will break, or they will be stolen, or they will be over, they will be taken away. So this is to be learned by the boy. Once lost, these materialistic possessions cannot be replaced. All right. Therefore, it becomes important for the boy to learn to accept the loss courageously. And the last 5 lines, and no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning. He refers to the child. Well behind his desperate eyes, the epistemology of loss. What is epistemology? Epistemology refers to the philosophy, the theory of knowledge. So this knowledge, this philosophy that he is going to learn, what is it? Let's see. Knowing what every man must one day know, and must know many days how to stand up. So it is a sad and harsh truth that one has to encounter losses frequently. Losses are a part and parcel of one's life. One cannot deny this or run away from this. Money, when the poet says money is external, he is basically saying that money is external because it can buy and replace something, but it cannot get back the original lost thing back. So the boy cannot get his original ball. This he is learning behind his desperate eyes. His eyes are described as desperate because he has faced a loss for the first time in his life, and therefore he is desperate to get the ball back. So this epistemology, this philosophy of loss is extremely important here, because the boy has learned his first lesson after this first loss of his. He has to learn to cope up with his loss and move on, because children, the life goes on. Everyone faces a loss at some point of time in their lives. So one must be brave, gather courage and move on, because yes, one has to move on. So today the boy has learned a valuable lesson. That is, we have to learn to accept the losses gracefully, and we have to keep moving. So the most important message here is to move on. Alright, so before concluding the poem, a quick revision of the poetic devices. There is alliteration. What is an alliteration? Occurrence of the same sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. Here we have balls, balls will be lost, and no one buys a ball back. So alliteration is there. Then we have repetition. Repetition means when we use a word or phrase number of times with the purpose of emphasis. The poets employ this particular poetic device in order to lay emphasis on that. So balls, this word has been repeatedly used to emphasize upon the idea that it stands for the possessions of a person, materialistic possessions. Okay, the word no and the phrase how to stand up have been also repeated. Symbolism, yes, the word ball itself is symbolic. It is a symbol of the materialistic possessions, and it is also symbolic of the childhood innocence of the boy. Anaphora. Anaphora is a literary device in which the writer repeats the same beginning of a clause or a sentence, chiefly with the purpose of emphasis on the repeated element, but also to bring rhythm in the writing. So in lines 1 to 4, you can identify anaphora. Personification, merrily bouncing, the ball has been personified here. Finally, let us conclude the poem. So the simple title evokes the curiosity of the reader, and this poem talks of the process of learning to face a sudden loss in one's life and reconciling to it. The poem deals with the philosophy of loss. Loss is an inevitable part of one's life, and it should not shatter anyone. No loss can be the end of life. That's why we should not be emotionally attached to materialistic things. If we remain detached, we shall remain calm and composed in such situations. This will provide resilience and mental strength to move on in our lives. I hope the poem was explained well. Thank you for watching.